two procurement nerds are back. We took a little bit of a hiatus and have been playing some of our top episodes. And we're back. So excited. I feel like I didn't realize how much I enjoyed recording every week with you, Dr. Eloise. And when you pinged me and said, okay, let's get back at it, I was actually like really excited. So I didn't realize the podcast had become such a part of my daily or weekly routine.
Same. And I was nice to have a little break because it gave me some perspective. And I've been on a bit of a sabbatical, and I've watched a ton of TikTok, a metric ton of TikTok. And so it's inspired a lot of new content, and we have some great episodes that we kept texting you.
I feel like the Dr. Eloise YouTube and TikTok binge has filled our pipeline of our content pipeline for months. We've got a pretty long list, and I will say we've had a couple new listeners reach out, which is really exciting to hear. People actually in Australia and New Zealand. So we're definitely going global. And one of them has a very detailed topic that they would like us to discuss. So we're definitely going to incorporate that and a couple others. So for those that are new listeners or are fanatics and listen every week, if you have specific topics that you'd like us to discuss, don't be shy about pinging either of us on LinkedIn. We love to hear input and feedback around what matters most to you and what's important. All right. So today, this topic, I actually feel like has been on our list for a while. I know this is kind of a fun one, not necessarily procurement related, but we like to do just interesting topics that we are passionate about. So today we're going to talk about things we miss from the 80s and 90s. Now, I was born in 1983, so I want to throw out that when I was working on this, I was celebrating a birthday with girlfriends. And so I actually crowdsourced some of my answers. So I want to be clear that some of mine, I have a broader group of input for my responses.
And I think, so I grew up, I was born in the early 70s, and I grew up in the 80s and sort of came of age. I graduated college in the 90s. I got married in the 90s. So I will talk more about the 70s and 80s. and the context for this, and this will come through in my list, is that we're in this AI age, and there's really, like, we have social media, we have mobile devices, we have AI, we have all this technology. And it's really interesting to think about what existed and didn't exist in our childhoods. Those of you that have seen me speak recently, I talk very much about the different generations. And I'm a straight up Gen Xer, and I grew up in a time before personal computers, I should say. So it changes the cultural perspective. So this isn't directly related to procurement, but it is sort of adjacent and very topical to what's going on, I think you'll find as we go through.
Yeah. So because I try to be organized, I have my responses kind of grouped into buckets. So why don't we'll kind of go through the groupings, and then Dr. Eloise, you just throw in as it makes sense with the groupings, and then maybe we'll have kind of a miscellaneous or other catch-all at the end.
Yes, good.
Okay, so first grouping is fashion, feels, and faux pas. So my theme, and I have kind of a theme for each of these, okay? So this theme is iconic trends and what our wardrobe says about us then and now. So I'm going to go through I guess we'll call it our nostalgia list, right?
These are. Oh, this is 100% nostalgia.
Okay. So leg warmers.
Nothing says the 80s like leg warmers. Oh my God.
Slap bracelets.
Yeah.
And over-plucked eyebrows. Junko jeans. jelly shoes, and Gap everything. So I remember it was like a big deal. It was like the cool thing to do to go to the Gap and get a pair of their when you look now, it's pretty plain and traditional type clothing, but a pair of their pants, a shirt from the Gap. Also on my list is lipstick and lip liner combo. So I used to like to shop at the Gap and get some clothes, or I would wear leggings, which I actually still love. I'm a total
Me
legging
too.
person because being really tall, it's hard to find pants that actually fit. So I feel like leggings just are made for tall people. And then I used to wear, and I still have them, I actually like them. I used to wear leg warmers in bright colors over my leggings. And then I had my 3-inch stilettos. So I would wear the leg warmer so it went down the back of the heel and went partially over my leggings.
You have to share a picture of that, like at some point. Like
And
that.
I sometimes had my crimped hair where I would wear it in all the braids and then take it out. And then it was like the big poof, like, kind of looks like you hit on your finger on a light socket. But my point of saying all that is then I used to wear with that lipstick with the lip liner combo. And it wasn't like blended in as much. It was like obvious that the lipstick and lip liner were different. And then for shoes, also popular, Keds.
Yeah.
The white Keds in particular, sometimes with the scrunch sock if I wasn't wearing the leg warmer. And then the Rocket Dog brand thong. I don't know if you ever owned or remember those. They were really popular. And then to round it all off to make sure people smelled good, it was the Axe and Original Old Spice deodorant.
Oh, God.
So that is my fashion skills and faux pas list. Anything, Dr. Eloise, that you want to throw into that mix?
Well, first off, I want to just acknowledge two things about the Gap. I remember the commercial because the commercials were, and it was fall into the Gap. But also Gap, because you have to remember when we would buy clothes prior, one of mine is gonna, well, I'll get to it in a bit, but most clothes shopping happened through Sears, J.C. Penney's, eventually Nordstrom. What was the other one? Saks, J.C. Penney. And so you had very limited selections. And so when Gap kind of became popular and there were Gaps all over, it did represent something very different than the traditional stuff you would get at the traditional department stores, which the department store seems quaint now because most of them have gone out of business or will go out of business.
And the catalog that went with the department store,
yes.
Right?
Yep. Macy's and Neiman Marcus. Those were the two I was missing. I don't know. Did you ever shop at Miller's Outpost?
You know what? So I grew up in Chico, California, and we did not have a Miller's Outpost in our mall. I think it was actually called, it wasn't even anything creative. I think it was called the Chico Mall.
Okay.
But I know of it, but we didn't have a local one, so it wasn't a go-to for me. J.C. Penney was like the big staple, and Sears at our mall.
Yeah. So Miller's Outpost was super, super popular, and everybody wanted the the jean jackets or the 501 button fly blue jeans. So anyway, yeah. So yeah, that's the only thing I would add there. That didn't really cross I didn't have fashion as one of mine.
It was my first on my list.
But it was you brought that to life so amazingly. So you just brought me right back.
And you also made a comment about the Gap advertisements. If I recall, I think it might have actually been in the 1991, not actually in 1980s, but I think the campaign was called Original Style, if I recall. and there was a whole campaign around almost highlighting the simplicity of their clothes and how that was kind of the cool on brand thing, showing allowing people to let their individual style and personality shine through. Okay, so my next bucket I have titled Pop Culture Powerhouse. And theme here for this is TV, music, and must-see moments that ruled the airwaves.
All right, so I just have to say one on my list was must-see TV. So I'm that's so funny. So keep going.
So my nostalgia for this is Entertainment Tonight, or ET, which I think is actually still a thing. I don't watch it anymore, but it was like, I still remember the music and the little alt intro and outro that they did on the show. And then there was Inside Edition, which was all the scoop and gossip. So I knew what was happening in the world. And then there was the incredible Love Connection, where you learned about dating and, you know, people's personal lives. And this was before there were online dating, right? So this was kind of like public facing dating of the time.
I mean, you have to understand too that there was no internet, so no public internet, I should say, and like we were very constrained to our local. I don't want to say tribal, but very much it was geographically constrained. Even if you travel, and travel wasn't as widely done as it is now. So these broadcast shows really it brought these other sort of, I'll say cultures, I mean that in terms of Midwest culture or California culture or East Coast culture or dating culture. Like these were this is one of the major ways we learned about like just absorbed cultural phenomena.
Okay, so then I'm going to throw in the new Friends episodes.
Okay, so I'm going to throw a few in. So Friends is very much a 90s show, and actually, by the way, speaking of 90s shows, I do think connecting to my last point, I do think it is important to talk about the Jerry Springer show. And there were some antecedents to that one, but that was the one that it blew up in the 90s and really showed a different side of America. I'll just say that a lot of folks weren't exposed to. And there are now a lot of documentaries about the 90s, and Jerry Springer, the Jerry Springer show is a cultural touchstone, as was Friends. Now, so that said, I'm going to go back, I'm going to rewind to the 80s. And there were just what was, I think, very critical or something to really understand is that and it's funny, we both use the term must-see TV. At certain nights of the week you had large concentrations of people watching. So Thursday night on NBC, where you would see the Cosby Show, Family Ties, Cheers, eventually Seinfeld. I'm missing one. Oh, it's gonna bug me. But anyway, on Tuesday nights you had the A-Team and Remington Steele. Home Improvement.
Started in I think it was 1991.
Yeah. So and it became like everybody, because there were only 12 channels or eventually like 20 channels with early cable. Everybody, or Saturday Night Live on Saturdays. So you got these very cultural touchstones, and it's very true for movies too. There weren't you couldn't just watch any movie anytime. If it was in the theater, you went to the theater to see it. And so I think one of the most impactful, I'll just flip the film for a second, but The Day After, which was ABC ran, and there's a documentary on this that came out recently about the after effects of nuclear war, and it very much scared the nation and perhaps even the world about the threat of nuclear war, and that was in 19. I'm going to say it was 83, could have been 84, but the thing that strikes me about watching that documentary is that so many people saw it because it was one night. It played one night, and everybody tuned in.
Yeah, because there were no distractions. Now
Right,
there's thousands of things you can watch.
right. And how many people, and I don't mean this pejoratively, but how many people watch TV and then also are on their phone or on their computer, like multitasking? It was not, I sound so old. It was not like that back then.
Mm-hmm. So I have a couple others to throw into this bucket here. So boy bands. So let's pivot to music, because we were talking about TV, but I mean, I was just in Vegas, and I was coming out of the elevator on Sunday, or maybe it was Monday. I can't remember which day it was, but the guy was looking like really happy. And I said, "Oh, it looks like, you're really enjoying yourself." And you want to know why he was so excited? Because the night before he went to see the Backstreet Boys at the Sphere. He was like, it was incredible. It was like a great production. And that's boy bands, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
And,
that was like the thing back then.
and we got to give a shout out to the Spice Girls because they came on and Destiny's Child. I mean, I think they all came about. Certainly, the Spice Girls were in the '90s, and I absolutely love them. Still
Oh,
love them.
I was all about Baby Spice. Baby Spice was my girl.
Yeah.
And then
Go.
also Michael and Janet Jackson.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
mean, that was their time.
Yeah, and Michael gets credit. I mean, they all get credit for the Jackson 5 in the '70s, but Michael's career really took off in the '80s, and probably about the time you were born. With he broke through with the Billie Jean and then Thriller. Thriller was the thing that just
Exploded.
as I recall. Now I could be wrong. I haven't fact checked this. This is my memory, but Thriller. I mean, and he was doing the moonwalk and he was so popular back then in the '80s, and then it exploded into the '90s, and then it kind of went
I
sideways.
actually saw a couple years ago, I saw Janet Jackson perform in Vegas, which was kind of
Wow.
interesting, kind of coming, and it was sold out.
Oh, yeah.
She had her groupies, and there was the store with all the swag that people were buying, and it's crazy to think that, how many years later she's like still a thing. It's a big deal.
And it's great. I mean, good for her.
Mm-hmm. And then a couple more random in this category: calling into radio stations. So I don't know. This used to be so cool. I thought this. So one time when I was a kid, I forget what the radio station was. It was a local radio station in Chico, and I loved listening to the radio. And so I always liked the call-ins. And so they were doing some contests. Well, you had to be like 16 or 18 typically to win something. So I called in and got in and was on air, and I had to pretend like I was old enough, and I obviously wasn't. And so after I did my thing on air, they take you offline, and they could tell I wasn't of age. And so I had to tell a story about this whole thing, and they didn't buy it, but I tried. I was hard pitching because I forget what I actually won. And my parents were at work, so I couldn't even like get them on the phone, but that was like a thing that I loved. And
Oh,
then Walkman and Discman.
yes.
I probably still have my Walkman somewhere, but I remember listening to my cassettes, and I loved Jewel and Garth Brooks and all my singers, and I would memorize their songs. So that was like a big thing for me. And then I remember getting to Blockbuster early but when people returned the best movies from the night before they sold out. So that was like
Yeah.
a big thing in our family, to time it, to get there, to get the best parking spot, to go in to get the movie.
So much to unpack there. Yeah, so like the big like, yes, radio content. In fact, there was a thing the other day on the radio, be the 10th caller, and I was like, well, A, I haven't heard that in like 20 or 30 years, but B, I was like, I don't even know how to do that anymore, because we didn't have cell phones.
Yeah.
We would just get there, punch the number in, and then usually be busy, and then you hit redial because
Totally.
they'd
You
say
just redial over and over and over.
over and over again. And so you basically call. If you got through, it said they'll pick up and say, "Hello, you're caller number 35," and then hang up on you because they were looking for caller number 99. Then you'd hit redial and go back, and
It was so fun.
oh my God, it was so stressful. Though it was, yeah. The only two things I won once, in San Diego, the big new wave station was called 91X. I think they still exist, but this way different incarnation now. But 91X was the new wave pop synth um, channel, and they were DJing a sort of a community party that I was at, and there was some raffle, and I won a record. So they were giving away records. This was before CDs. I won a big country. No, actually, I won. I forget whatever. There was two winners, and the other person won the big country album, and I won something else. But they took mine, so I ended up with the big country album, which I thought was pretty funny, or at least now I think it's funny. So that was one thing I won, and then when I was in college in like 1990, there was uh, they said if you show up at this gas station, which happened to be like a mile from my house, they're giving away gift certificates to this. And so I went and met. Then I said, hey, I heard on the radio, and I got a $50 gift certificate to a place called the Earthquake Cafe in San Marcos, California. So those are my two radio wins.
So mine are not in the right timeline. The show is supposed to be things we missed from the 80s and 90s, but random side note. So when I called in and I wasn't of age, they wouldn't buy it. And I actually didn't win the prize. I don't remember what it was, but I actually hosted a radio show with my best
Nice.
friend, Nicole Smart. And it was in 2016 and 2017. It was called Career Conversations, and it was on the Sonoma County radio station KSRO. And it was a 30-minute show. And back then, you didn't do anything remotely still. So we would drive in to the radio station every week. And so it was really fun. We actually had our own show. And sometimes we had guests, we had call-ins. And so it wasn't necessarily winning something, but actually hosting a show. And then when I was in college, my sorority sister wanted to go on the Wheel of Fortune. So we drove down. You have to like sleep out. You wait. Well, of course, she got picked for the show. So she won. And at the end, we all had matching shirts that we had made to support her. Like we thought that would help her get picked. So we got to go on stage after she won. And it was us and the Vanna White or the girls on the show. Yeah. And I was probably a foot taller than all of them. So here's me like towering over in my like corny little shirt. So those are two random side notes.
That's pretty funny. I absolutely love that. My college roommate went and Price is Right, and I don't know, I can't remember what happened, but she got on, and I don't know what she did, but yeah, she got
if
called
you
up.
are a little quirky or outlandish in the line, it helps. So we definitely supported Kelsey in getting on this show.
Yeah, that's great. All right, I have a couple music ones. So,
Okay.
So speaking of, so two things. One is MTV. I remember a time before
Totally.
when actually MTV played music videos,
Yes.
and I think it was in 1980 that they came online. I have to remember. I just somebody something a podcast or something was talking about the first song that played. Maybe I'll look that up. in a minute, but uh, that it was like music videos were just like mind blowing as I was in middle school when music videos came out, and I remember. I remember distinctly going to what is the Del Mar Fair, which is the county fair down there, and MTV had a booth or something, and I had no idea what it was, but a friend of mine had seen it, and like it became the thing
I was
for.
obsessed. I just looked it up for you. So the very first song that ever aired on MTV, it was August 1st, 1981, and it was Video
81.
Killed the Radio Star by the
That's
Bugles.
what it was. That's right. Yes. Okay. So 81. Okay. See, my brain's not. Okay. I was off a little bit, but yeah, video killed the radio star. And yeah, and it became such a cultural touchstone in the for sure in the 80s. I think the thing about the 90s, and you probably could speak to this more, is the 90s was when we first started to see the reality TV, and that kind of changed the trajectory of network television. Um, but NTV, and there's a song called, is it Stacy's Mom? And one of the lyrics is back when there was music on MTV, and I just that will always, like, it was like, again, like you'd have this top 20 of the day, and people would tune in to watch the videos and see. And one of the most, and this will lead to my second point, but one of the most popular videos early on in MTV, and I'm guessing this was 84 because the album was 1984, but it was Van Halen's Jump. And David Lee Roth was doing all these acrobatics in the video, and it was just, it blew people's mind, blew my mind for sure.
My parents were fans. I know those songs well.
And I think what I would say, and I'll do this backwards, but what I really miss, and it's related to that, is right after that, the evolution of hair metal. So your Poison, your Twisted Sister, Rat, um,
Was never
uh,
my thing, but I know people that became obsessed.
Def Leppard. I mean, I mean, like the people, I was at the dentist a couple years ago, and this woman that was cleaning my teeth, and because it was just pre-pandemic, because I was going to go with some friends to one of these that was like a Def Leppard, Guns N' Roses concert down in San Diego. We're all going to go back there, and we were talking, and she's like, "Oh my God, I was so obsessed with the hair metal and her hair, like you were just teased out to the nth. I mean, it was such a thing, and I don't know. We were just so I was so enamored with the hair metal. It was just because it was just so different than the punk synth new wave that I was talking about that was played on 91X. It was different than disco. It was different than the music in the
It
70s.
was its own movement.
It was, and of course, you come to find out now. I listened to Motley Crue's biography. All these guys were coked out on cocaine and heroin and drugs, but we didn't know that at the time because there wasn't TMZ and there wasn't the internet. So it was the spectacle of these massive concerts, and yeah, it was pretty amazing. Now I want to just give a shout out to the music from the 70s because I didn't appreciate it then, but I did grow up with it. And what I realized, I grew up listening to it, I just didn't like connect with it. But now I've gone back because I pay for like 10 streaming services. But so I do listen to 70s songs. And what I realized that was different about that is songs in the 70s were like 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 minutes long. And they told a story and they would go different places. And I now appreciate that, whereas now you get like what, 2 minutes and 45 seconds to 4 minutes, and boom, boom, and the music industry changed. But if you actually go back to the 70s, you hear it before the commercialized music business changed. So
Yeah, and you now have the around the world type songs where there's absolutely no creativity, no
Yep.
storytelling. It's a very different music landscape than when you
Yeah.
look at some of the songs from the 70s.
Yeah, I mean, it is truly phenomenal. I'll just got to give out a shout out to Warren Zevon, which is such a random or song, but I love his songs. They're just they tell such stories, and I've been hooked on these, and now the YouTube algorithm keeps me hooked on them. So anyway, and I will say that the hair metal had really interesting lyrics, but they were so not raunchy as in bad words, but you just kind of like, wait, what? Like, as a kid, you didn't understand it.
All right, next bucket is retail therapy and brand nostalgia.
Okay, yeah,
My theme for this one is where we shopped, what we bought, and why it mattered.
yeah,
So we mentioned some stores in the last one, but these were like staples in Chico where I grew up. Kmart, Mervyn's,
Mervin's, yes.
and Linen and Things were
Hmm.
three like just go to. But of those three, Mervyn's was like its own destination where I lived. It was like an absolute, it wasn't even part of the main mall because it was so popular. I remember candy machines where you would put 25 cents in and then you
Yes.
get like a gumball or something bright colored out of it. And that was like a cool, fun thing. And then for kind of food beverage brands, Snackwells,
Hmm.
boxed wine, and then Zima wine coolers.
Oh my God. Oh my God.
So those are kind of my three things in that category that I just remember. I did not consume all of these things, but I remember them as just kind of standouts.
Okay, so yeah, I don't drink as you don't. But I do remember Zima. I also Corona became super popular in the early 90s, at least in the San Diego, Southern California area. Like all of a sudden it came out of nowhere. We would be remiss if we didn't mention Coke, New Coke. That was such a drama uh, because it was like one of the big, great product failures. Um, uh, and but in terms of shopping, the thing that actually I had on my list was malls because
Mhm.
malls didn't really exist when or not to the same degree. I mean, obviously they existed, but it became like malls were another cultural touchstone. We would go to the mall every weekend or
Oh, it was
every,
like the cool, fun thing to do.
yeah, and the mall near us didn't even get built until sometime in the 80s. And I wasn't even in rural areas. It was like it was such a yeah, it was just the mall was everything in the sort of mid to late 80s. And if you really want to see just how I think this movie captured that essence was Fast Times at Ridgemont High. Southern California mall culture or Valley Girl culture was so encapsulated in that movie, and that I mean that was so my childhood of, and you get the explosion of the stores like Miller's Outpost, um,
Abercrombie
get
and Fitch.
Abercrombie and Fitch, Gap, like it was See's Candy, like it became all these things became really very, what's the word I'm looking for? They just
It
became
was like a destination going to.
totally. And so Orange Julius, which
Yes.
doesn't exist anymore. Hot dog on a stick, which
My
do you know how many of those I ate? I mean, I can't
my
even imagine.
college girlfriend worked at Hot Dog on a Stick and had the outfit,
Yeah,
like the stripes and then the hat that went with it. It was like
yeah.
a great Halloween costume.
Oh my God, so great. And so food courts were a big thing, and it was just, it was, like, malls have all but died now, and it's sort of sad to see. And actually, on my YouTube feed, I get a lot of abandoned malls, people going into abandoned malls, and it's just so wild because to see the disconnect, because it was just such an important thing for kids coming of age, and of course, hand in hand with consumption. Like we are an entire generation, and we've been talking about all this consumption we did. So.
Mhm. Yeah, and I'll say that I've noticed a shift in commercial real estate, especially in the last couple of years, with malls now filling vacancies with experiences.
Yeah.
So, like having activities that people go and participate in is replacing traditional retail stores.
Yeah. And I've also, because I couldn't help myself, I've seen mall conversions where they to convert the malls into apartments, which I think is just utterly fascinating.
Mhm.
And yeah.
Alrighty, next bucket is before smartphones ruled the world. And my theme for this one is tech communication and being unreachable on purpose.
Or not on purpose.
So my nostalgia list is call waiting.
Hmm.
So I remember when we got call waiting because it was like a big deal because you would call and you would just get a busy signal and then you would have to hang up. So call waiting was like a really cool thing where you would hear the music or some recording talking. Pagers.
Oh, pagers. Oh my God.
So when I was in high school, people didn't have cell phones, or when I was growing up, pagers kind of became the thing, right? If there was a way that you needed to get in touch with someone, and then leaving voice messages was like a big thing, right? That was like kind of a fun, cool thing to leave, or even leave your own voicemail recording so people could leave you a message.
I just have to say, and also related to this is, remember, all the phones were wired. So it was a big deal to get like a 50-foot telephone cable so you could walk around with the phone, and you'd have to like it was all corded. So if you had it, you could go into another room and close the door if you wanted a private yeah, yeah.
Yeah, you wanted to try to get to your bedroom so your whole family didn't hear your conversation. And
And
that
if
was
you
the goal.
had siblings, remember one phone
Yeah.
line, like four phones. So if somebody picks up another phone, they're listening to your conversation.
Or and before you had call waiting, one person got the phone.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
you had to like rotate and have a schedule.
yeah. And just because we're going down this memory lane, when the early internet came, the dial-up used the
Yes,
phone line, so your
yes. So
phone
then
line was
you get
busy.
kicked off.
Oh, it's just like the drama and the torture we had to go through.
Oh, and there were, I mean, I'm one of four. So we had six people in the household,
Oh my God, I can't
right?
even
That's a
imagine.
lot of people that want to be on the internet or making phone calls.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
All right, I have on my list Thomas Guides,
That's on my list.
MapQuest, and AAA Maps. So I
Yeah.
remember before, if we would go on vacation, we would go to AAA, we'd show our card, and then it was the cool thing to go and get the maps. They had the holders in the lobby or in like a special section, and they were kind of like alphabetized. You'd go and you'd get your maps for wherever you were going.
So, I have yes. So maps. So I have a theory. I'll get to this at the end, but maps, um, big part of my sort of growing up and coming of age. But also, I'm making, I'll make a prediction later that they're coming back. But we had the Rand McNally, which was a big thing, and it was a big page for every state. So you'd have all 50 states in this big it was bigger than 11 by 14. It was just slightly bigger, I think. And then they would have insets for the cities. And yeah, so my first job out of college was touring with Oakland Ballet, and we basically had a Rand McNally, and we figured it out both sort of by have other folks on the team having been to these places and just following the freeways, the Rand McNally, and like, I don't know, a hope and a prayer. I don't know how we found anything back then.
Especially, I don't know how we functioned when we were not local. Like,
Oh, yeah.
hard enough to not get lost locally, but if you're traveling out of state or somewhere else and didn't have navigation, I don't know that I could actually get to a destination this day and age if I had to use a map.
Oh yeah, I mean, I've lost. I'm sure I've lost that skill. Although what I will say is, we ended up asking people a lot
Yeah.
more. So we'd arrive at the theater and ask, "Hey, how do you know?" And everybody was a little more detailed with, "Okay, take a right, go to two lights, take a left." And like there was a little more of that cultural fluency around that. But oh my God, yeah, yeah, we drive from Oakland to Vegas, and sometimes I try to do it without the navigation just to sort of, and then inevitably I panic and then pull up the GPS. But
Yeah,
it's like,
you're worried that you've lost that muscle.
oh, I 100%. Yeah, that's exactly what I fear.
All right, my last item in this category is the dot matrix printers. So I don't know if for those who are listening even remember what it is, but for how I describe it is it made like the characters and images out of a bunch of tiny dots.
Yes.
So it had all those pins or needles, whatever you want to call it, and it hit the inked ribbon and it would like strike the paper and leave dots, and that was how you printed something.
I have an amazing story about this because my dad was into early computers, and we had a dot matrix printer, and I don't even know it was some creative program. And so again, this gets back to the MTV thing, and in seventh grade, it was really popular. Like these bands were just really coming of age because I think this was 82 or 83, and so I had figured out a way that I could print like there were bands like the Thompson Twins. So I could print out Thompson Twins on this printer, and it would all be connected, and one page would be like the TH and one page for each letter, so that you could like if you could have Thompson Twins like across. And so I used to print these out and sell them. Like people would say, what I'd ask what they want. I'd print them out and I'd sell them in seventh
It's like
grade.
your Etsy store 20 years early.
Like I don't even I don't even like what the heck was I even doing? But I made some money doing that.
And if I recall them, our printers were kind of crappy and like they always
Oh,
didn't work, or you had to replace or we had to get another. It was not like a pleasant experience. There was always an issue with the printer.
uh, my entire childhood and adulthood, printers have always sucked. I hate printers. I avoid printing things at all. So they were bad back then, and I just don't like them
Heather,
now.
the toner queen, plug your ears. You're not listening to this. All right, next bucket. Old school knowledge and daily life.
Mm-hmm.
And my theme for this is when print was so perfect timing. We did not set this up. Theme is when print was king and habits were manual.
Mm-hmm.
So encyclopedias, newspapers, and the YM magazine.
Yeah.
So my local newspaper was called Enterprise Records. I think that's what it was called. It was the local Chico newspaper, and it was the old school. We had it delivered to our door. I can't remember if it was 5 or 6 days a week, if they did the weekends. Was not digital at all. So you went out, you got the newspaper, you had it with your breakfast. And then we had a whole section on our bookshelf with the encyclopedias. And when we were doing school projects, you had to go and find the right letter and open it up and flag it with a bookmark or highlight it. So those were like heavily used in our household. And then I also have book clubs. So
Hmm.
I remember those being like becoming a really big thing, both for adults, like parents became like my mom in a book club where women would get together once a month, and then also kind of moved down to my age. And then a couple other things that stood out to me in this category was writing checks.
Oh,
So I honestly cannot even tell you the last time I've written a check. It's like not even a thing. And writing checks was like the thing. It's what you did. It was a multi-billion-dollar industry. Then you had the I forget what it was called, where you had the 3 copies. So you wrote the check, you peeled it off, and then you had
the
yes,
carbon copies.
carbon. And then when you finished your checkbooks, my parents would save the copies and file it away because you might need that sometime. And then I have the Thomas Guide was also a thing.
Yeah.
And then random in this category, which kind of ties into school, was the cootie catchers. We
I
used
don't
to,
know those.
okay, we used to make cootie catchers. It was like a craft, and then you would hang them in your bedroom. And then pep rallies.
Oh, pep
That was
rallies.
like
Yes.
a really big thing in school, was going to the pep rally.
Yep. Yeah, that was pep rallies were a big thing. Yeah. Um, so we didn't have encyclopedias at home, so we always had to go to the library. And when we had research projects, I mean, I was a terrible student, so it's not like I really gave it a lot of effort, but we go to the library and you have to check out books because there was no Amazon. You couldn't just buy the book. There was no Kindle. You couldn't like, and
My guess is my parents probably got sold by those door-to-door
oh yeah.
salespeople that used to go and sell encyclopedias. I'm pretty sure that's how we wound up with a set at our house.
Yeah, and I mean, because there was no Wikipedia, it was like you salesmen would sell them, and or you'd have to go to the library. It's just so wild to think. And if we went to the library, for a long time there were no computers, so you'd have to go to the card catalog. And I remember all the way into college, they would teach us how to use the card catalog, even as the first computers. Um, Another thing in this category that you reminded me of was pen pals. I didn't have a pen pal, but that was like a big thing. And you would write to somebody in another country and correspond.
I actually don't think I had a pen pal either, which is kind of odd because I would have been a pen pal person. That's kind of my personality. And I wouldn't even be opposed to it now. I think it's kind of cool, but I didn't have one either.
Yeah. All right. So I have a few in this bucket. So
Right.
this will close out my list. Actually, I think.
Okay.
So playing outside, we were as early as I can remember. So this would be like 6 years old and later. We were not allowed to play in the house. Like as the day would come,
Mhm.
like start, or if we go to school and come home, we were never in the house. And we were out. We were causing trouble, and we were doing things we shouldn't have been doing. But we were out in the neighborhood I grew up. There was what was called a swim and tennis club. So we went to the pool a lot. And there were playgrounds. I'll come to
Yeah.
playgrounds here in a second. And then eventually so there were video games, and I'll get to that in a second. So that we were not inside the house. We were not. And I remember just one of my friends, Gene, shout out to Gene. Uh, I remember we would just sit there and throw the ball back and forth together for hours because, like,
This is
what else were we?
this is when kids, I feel like, were kids and they
Yeah.
actually like got to get dirty and build an immune system. And we didn't have this whole helicopter parent movement.
I don't know where my parents were, but they were not paying attention. I know they were not paying attention to me. And I don't mean that as a negative thing.
Yeah.
It's just like, so, and that's going to lead me to playgrounds were very different back then. We had like merry-go-round. Like, I mean, if you were not careful, you would really hurt yourself. And everything was metal, and the playgrounds were amazing, but they were so dangerous. These like merry-go-rounds
Oh,
were
and
like,
people would drop their kids off, and like
oh
parents
yeah,
were like out, like gone.
gone. Yeah, there would be summers where we would just get dropped off at, I don't know, 10 a.m. or 11 a.m. and we'd spend the whole day at the club, playing on the playground, swimming, uh, and like, and then like you'd be on the merry-go-round, and then so the older kids would come along and just whip the thing around, and there was a lot of bullying. I was bullied a lot. It's funny, I was reflecting on that. It's like, oh my God, I was bullied so much as a young kid, but I didn't know
The
it.
playground bully.
Oh my God, it was just, anyway. But, like there was these huge rocket ships and the slides were all metal. So in the summer, like you're going down the slides, burning your, rear end off. And like nobody thought, it's like, it was just like what you did.
Yeah.
And so like real playgrounds and playing outside, and then of course arcades. So they came along in the mid 80s, where you would go to an arcade and you would have all these different machines,
Yeah.
and you would stand in line to play the game, or the
Like
less
Chuck E.
popular.
Cheese was really popular. People would have their birthdays there, and then you'd have the pizza that tasted like cardboard.
It probably had cardboard in it.
And then it was the arcades. You get your coins and you go wait in line to play all the arcade games.
Yeah. And even before Chuck E. Cheese, there were, like, I remember where I grew up, there was two arcades, one called Yellow Brick Road and one called Games Time. And he basically was just like, I don't know, call it 30 cabinets of games, and you just sit there and play. And there was nothing better than just, being dropped off there for a couple of hours. You get some bullies in there too, by the way, but
Yeah, the arcade bully is different than the playground bully.
just like, it was really like a traumatic time. But and then when the new games would come out, like I remember Star Wars. There was a Star Wars game that came out; it was very popular. Then Dragon's Lair came out, and that was super popular. And it was, yeah, it was an interesting time to grow up. And then in this bucket, I would add one more, and it's very specific, but it sort of builds on what we've been talking about. And I'm going to call it Feral Halloween, where on Halloween night, it was just like the kids would just unload on the neighborhood. And I mean, like, I can, and this was especially early on when I was like 7, 8, and I was still trick or treating with my parents, but just remembering hordes of teenagers roaming the streets and just causing trouble. And like there was zero, like, and you come home with massive amounts of candy. There was zero oversight, no adults, like, other than managing the little ones, but just like, I can't think of any way to describe it other than feral Halloween.
We lived in the neighborhood that everyone dropped their kids off at, and because
Yep.
people gave whole candy bars.
Yes.
And I remember the pillowcases were the cool thing. So
Yep.
everyone would go take their pillowcase or try to get a new pillowcase because you could fit more candy in it. It was
Yep.
more stable than using like a bag. And it was free for all.
Oh, total free for all. And if you made like, there was a few houses that made the mistake of putting the basket
Oh,
out, a sign. I mean, I remember again, the Halloween bullies would just come and take
dump.
the whole thing, and there was I don't know, not nefarious, but just mischief, and I don't know, smoking and all kinds of things.
Yeah, and it's so different now. Mischief back then versus now, right? We didn't have gun violence and all the crazy, scary things. It was a very different type of mischief.
Oh yeah, totally. And I think that what really changed it, and there's a new documentary about this on Netflix, but is the Tylenol scare. And that's when I feel like parents started to think, hey, what is all this candy? And are people injecting the candy or people? And, and so, yeah, so it was, and then I just want to sidebar on speaking of candy. That was back when candy had real sugar in it and real dairy and not this high fructose corn syrup and all this other, like that was back when candy tasted like candy. And
At our household, the popular candy was Reese's peanut butter cups.
yes,
That was like the
100%.
sacred. Like if you got those, that was like you scored.
You totally scored 100%. So,
All right, my last category to round us out is I titled it Culture Shifts and Planetary Grievances. And the theme is what we believed, what we miss, and how it changed. So, my nostalgia for this is when Pluto was still a planet, common sense, and the Thigh Master.
oh, the Thigh Master. All
So,
right. So, what about the aerobics with the step classes? Did you do that?
so I was never an aerobics person, but the videos became popular with the spandex and the hair up when you were doing it more in your house. Like
Yeah.
people weren't going to gyms, they were doing kind of the workout in the house.
Wow. Yeah. Yeah. What did we? Yeah, there were so many things that we believed back then. I mean, of course, the big one was the evil empire, the USSR and the Soviet Union, and growing up thinking that nuclear war could break out any day. Um, I grew up in San Diego, and it was and is a Navy town, but it was extremely defense focused back in the day. And if those of you that remember or read about Able Archer, which was the big war game exercise that the U.S. did, I think it was in '83 actually. Um, those of you that are Ed Helms fans, he did a podcast on Able Archer, and they were it was basically practicing nuclear, like if nuclear bombs went off and evacuations. And because we lived close to um, uh, Camp Pendleton, there was a lot of like helicopters were in the sky all the time during that time. And so, and it was because we thought that at any moment the Soviet Union was going to just send intercontinental ballistic missiles at us. And
So lots of people in uniform.
oh yeah, and just lots of it was just a very a weird time. And it was because we had this mistaken belief that we were on the verge of nuclear war. And actually, if you go to the now Russia and their archives and sort of their stories, like they thought we had like Reagan had the finger on the button and was just deciding every day whether or not to hit the button, which all of use wasn't true. So,
Mhm.
yeah, so that was the belief one. By the way, sort of, I'm going to throw this in there, but if you remember the Heaven's Gate, which was the cult that they believed that was it the Haley Bob comet, like if they killed themselves, it would put them onto the comet. There was a documentary about this a couple years ago. Um, anyway, it was like 24 of them or some like number that they took their own lives. And that was actually, I don't know, like 10 minutes from where I went to junior college. So, and I remember that happening, while I was, not that far from there. Also, just sort of the Rodney King riots in
Yes.
'91, because I
I
was in
remember
Irvine.
that. That was like everyone was watched that on TV.
Yeah, and that was I was an hour south, but my friend was going to USC, and that was one of the places that was a like the police were staging at USC. So like it was a really I remember those things. I know that's a little off topic, but those are sort of touchstones that I remember.
I
All
I
right.
I looked up Heaven's Gate and it said it was UFO-centered religious group founded in the 1970s by
Okay.
Marshall Applewhite and Bonnie Nettles.
Okay. There you go. And what was the date that they? Uh,
It says they the bodies were discovered on March 26, 1997.
oh, 97. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So I got my dates wrong. I'm glad you looked. So that it was not far from where I went to junior college, but I went to junior college in 89, 90, and 91. So I
Okay.
was long gone. All right, so a couple things just to close out, and sort of this is related, although I put it as analog things I wish would make a comeback. But we've been talking about this as paper maps. I really believe that we need to bring back paper maps and learn how to read them and exercise those muscles. I really want cars without computers. I just don't like having all the computers in the cars. Board games. Much of my first 10 years, 12 years, board games were a big thing with the neighbors. When my brother came,
Monopoly was our favorite of
oh, the
all.
favorite.
Owning the blue Park Place real estate was like it.
Boardwalk and Park Place.
Yes.
Yeah, and where there was a game called Sorry, and then
Yes.
playing Gin and War. Like that was so much. Like that was really important, like bonding with families that just doesn't happen anymore. Reading books, physical books. Now, I think there's a lot of people that still read physical books. I like reading physical books. I don't like collecting them because they're all, like you have so many. But I saw a TikTok video. There are groups of people in New York and I guess other cities where they'll all meet up one night and everybody will sit in the park and read. So you're with a community, but you're all just sitting there reading
Like it's
books.
a modified book club.
Yeah, exactly. So nobody's talking, everybody's sitting there reading, but you're not sitting at home alone. And so it's very social. Of course, newspapers, that's a whole different topic, watching because like you were saying, like that's how we got news other than on the like 8 o'clock news. But here's the one thing and that I miss the most, and I think I'm going to start doing this again. I think I'm going to start doing all these things again. But the thing I miss the most is writing actual letters to people, because you would write a letter or eventually I typed them using early word processors. You'd put it in an envelope, you put a stamp on it, it arrived 3 days later. And then a couple of days later, they'd send something back. So a week or two later, you'd get a letter. And it was really exciting because you go to the mailbox and you'd get a letter from Sarah or from uh, Diana or whomever. And I've kept a lot of those letters because, I mean, how many emails do we send? And like, I have tens of thousands and hundreds of thousands of emails. I have even no idea what they are, but I do remember these letters, and I'm going to make my sort of, I don't know, goal is to write one letter a week and start communicating with people that way. Try to make use of the U.S. Postal Service that seems to be in trouble.
So the
But
first thing that came to mind when you said that is I have to learn how to write again.
well,
For
yeah, just so
example,
we clear, I type mine, so
because I honestly don't ever use, for example, cursive
yeah,
other
no,
than signing my name. I would really have to practice, and even handwriting. I write so little now.
yeah,
I would really have to practice making sure something was legible enough to actually write out and send someone.
yeah,
The second thing I think about is I can't even tell you the last time that I got something handwritten in the mail.
yep. So I actually, what this was sort of triggered this is recently a friend of mine from Kearney just retired, Mark Hockman, shout out to him in his retirement. and we all of us did various things to celebrate his retirement, and he sent me a handwritten notes, and I just thought a thank you note, and I just thought, yeah, that was really awesome, and it's like it made me just nostalgic and got me thinking about letters and handwritten stuff. So even though
So
I don't handwrite, so
so my one of my favorite podcasts, I've probably mentioned this on the show before, is called My First Million.
yep,
And Sean and Sam, the hosts, bring on people who have started companies and share their really unique experiences and stories. And one of the guests that came on, one of the really memorable moments in his career was getting a handwritten letter from Warren Buffett. And I guess there are events and parties that he throws regularly, and he takes the time now, whether it's not whether it's really him or someone doing it on his behalf, but it's a handwritten note from him. And this guy, when he got it, he was like, wow, I'm nothing. This person, is one of the most famous people in the world, and he took the time to do this. So this guy, because of getting that handwritten note from Warren Buffett, same as you, Dr. Eloise, he has a commitment, and I forget what the number is, but he writes a certain number of handwritten letters every single month because of it.
yeah, it's brilliant, and I just think, and it's so. I mean, I can remember like my friend growing up. He joined the military and went to basic training. I remember him writing me letters from basic training. Another friend went to the reserves, but ended up getting stationed in Haiti, and I remember getting letters from him. When I was in college, I went to the Utah Shakespeare Festival. I remember sharing letters back and forth with my college friends. It's just like I can pinpoint these moments because I remember these letters. And I can't even tell you any email that I read or responded to today.
No, I'll have to circle back with you and see how your letter writing is.
We'll see. It might not start this week, but I am committed to it because I think it is, at least for me, it feels like I'm going to take the time to invest in writing a letter that is meaningful versus, I mean, first of all, I'm convinced people don't read emails, but second of all, if I write a 50-page email, like, like I'm not sure anybody's going to read that, but if I, hand you a piece of paper, I just think it has a different feel to it.
Yeah, I love that. Well, it's not even that, it's the memorability factor.
Yeah,
Somebody may read the email, they may think it's nice or generous, but are they going to remember it? But if you take the time to do something out of the ordinary, it's much more likely that it will be remembered and have a longer term impact.
exactly. Like my friend Patrick, shout out to Patrick. When I was in Utah at the Shakespeare Festival, by the way, that's a whole separate story. I only lasted 2 weeks and got fired, and that's a whole nother story. But he he was sending me letters, and we used to go to the beach because we were in Irvine next to Newport Beach, and we'd skip class and go to the beach. And so while I was in Utah, he would write me letters about going to the beach, and he would do little drawings of like waves and him trying to like avoid the waves and rock climbing, and I just remember like because you're right, it is so memorable. So
Yeah. If you can draw and you're
yeah,
listening
I
to
mean,
the
I
show,
can't.
I
Yeah,
feel like that's an extra talent if you send somebody a note with a drawing.
yeah.
All righty. This might be one of our longest episodes. I feel like
uh,
we had so much that we wanted to share and talk about.
so much nostalgia, but I just thought like this has been on our list, like you said, and it's just so much fun to reminisce. When you did the fashion one, I was just kind of like staring at the screen thinking, oh my God, I remember all of that. And it's so fun I don't know, this was a lot of fun to record.
Tonight, I'm gonna look for two things: a pair of my leg warmers and my Blockbuster card.
Oh yeah, yeah. Like by the way, I have to say I don't miss Blockbuster because you always have to rewind, like watching VHS tapes and then rewinding them. And there was the sign "Be Kind" to rewind, and I absolutely hated videotapes. Like I'm so here for the YouTube digital revolution, Netflix. Like that part I love. But,
All
oh,
right.
by the
Well,
way, just on music, we didn't even talk about mixtapes. Like
yeah.
that was a way we communicated, because actually in some of the letters I got mixtapes, and because you would take the time to put together a bunch of songs.
Yeah,
So
I might actually try to dig up a mixtape as well. I'm going to add that to my list.
I don't think I have any mixtapes. I, I'll see if I do. Somewhere I might, but oh my God, yes, mixtapes.
All right. Well, I think that's a wrap.
That's a wrap.
Drop us a note in the comments if you have something that you want to share that you missed from the 80s or 90s. We love to see. People are so creative, and we just have random things that really stand out.